ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to a special episode of COASTER-net Uncut. It is a thrilling 32 preview here. It's not the selection show. We're not quite there yet. That's coming in just a few short weeks. I am Danny Miller from Binghamton, New York, alongside, as always, Andrew Barczyk from Chicago, Illinois. And Andy, we're going to do something a little different tonight because we haven't calculated the rankings yet. I'm still putting the ballots into the algorithm. We haven't run the script yet. Neither you nor I know what the rankings are for the Thrilling 32 yet, even though voting has ended. We're waiting until right before we do the selection show, which is we've never done it that way before. And we're going to respond to our fans a little bit because some folks have asked us to speculate on how the new for 2017 rides might fare in their first year of eligibility for the Thrilling 32. So before we actually know the answer and we know how many 2017 rides make it into the Thrilling 32 and where they might be, we're going to speculate, having no idea where they'll be, on which rides may or may not get in.
Well, as you know, Danny, that the hardest part of filling out the brackets is trying to figure out where rides are going to fall within the top 50 rides of how people rank them. Now, you may have seen this on Twitter, but I'm already mad at work trying to figure out the historical rankings.
That's right. You're looking for the trends, which you've never done before,
to try and see which coasters might do better. You know, last year I had great success in the Thrilling 32. If you recall that I did win the whole thing.
Yes, you did.
Then relinquished my crown.
Yes, you did.
But the hardest part always is trying to figure out where the new rides are going to fit in. Now, luckily, in 2017, there weren't a whole lot of new rides to talk about.
Yeah.
But there were a few. I've made a list here. Now, Danny, I know you are Mr. Bracketology yourself here. So why don't we start with DC Rivals, because that seems to be one of the most talked about rides. Granted, it opened up later in the season. Granted, it's in Australia. It looks like a fantastic roller coaster that probably should be in the Thrilling 32. But do you think it's actually going to break that 32 barrier?
You know, if this was a ride maybe that opened in the summer, but you know,
or
maybe
anywhere else in the world.
Well, yeah. Well, but I mean, the fact that in Australia is a tough place to get to for a lot of our voters, because we do have a very North America-based audience. Although we did have several Europeans and also Asian folks with home parks in Europe and Asia voting, and a couple in Australia as well that did get to ride DC Rivals. So we did have DC Rivals represented. And of course, I've seen a lot of the votes come in. I haven't picked them apart one by one, but I have seen them come in, and DC Rivals has been represented. However, because, you know, Southern Hemisphere, it just opened in October. It's only had a few months. I don't know that it's going to have enough in terms of ridership to qualify, but I do think this is a ride that once it does have the ridership to qualify, I think it's in the Thrilling 32. So I think it's maybe a year away from actually making it into the bracket, but I think it's a ride that we need to keep an eye on, but maybe not this year.
Now, the next ride I have on my list here, and I'm just picking your brain here to see how to fill out my own bracket. You know, I like to go to the expert. Is the Lek coaster out of Poland? Now, this ride built by Vekoma looks absolutely fantastic. Mm-hmm. I think is the signaling of a rebirth of Vekoma. I think we're going to be seeing a lot out of Vekoma over the next few years. Where we've seen this Lek coaster, we know Vekoma's been booked up solid with a number of different European projects over the next few years, including the new Fly roller coaster that a lot of people are excited about. We assume that's Vekoma. I don't know if that's actually been confirmed.
I think it has been.
Yeah. So what do you think about Lek? Poland, I got to imagine that if DC Rivals doesn't get in, Lek doesn't have much of a chance here either.
Lek is an interesting one because you would think that we have gotten a lot of voters from Germany and Belgium and the Netherlands the last 2 years. So this is one that I think those folks would ride maybe next year. It doesn't seem like too many people rode this one this year, but it's kind of like California coasters or like Texas coasters for you or me. It's like maybe you don't get out there the first year, but the second or third year you probably get there. So I would think, much like DC Rivals, this might be a one to look at in a future year. But this year, I think it's just a matter of qualifying for ridership. Let Coaster looks like a great ride, but when you consider how many voters we've had this year and how many new rides may potentially get in this year, I think Let Coaster, even if it had the minimum ridership, I think this is one that probably gets squeezed out. I don't think this is one that makes it in.
Now, the next one is one that I'm pretty sure is going to make it into the Thrilling 32. The question is, how high is this ride going to go? That is one Mystic Timbers down at Kings Island. So what do you think here? Like, recently we've seen new coasters do really well. We saw Fury has done really well both of its years in the poll. Lightning Rod took home the crown last year. Mm-hmm. Some people are saying Mystic Timbers right up with that group. Is that a top 5 ride? I know for me it is, but I don't know if the general public, if the majority of voters are going to feel the same way on that.
Well, I was kind of going through this in my head the other day, and because, like I said, I'm the keeper of the ballot, if you will. So I see all the votes when they come in, but I don't pick them apart one by one until I actually put them into the algorithm. So speaking from someone who doesn't know what the results are, I think Mystic Timbers would probably have a legitimate shot to definitely be in the top 10 on the wood side of things this year. I think it's too good of a ride, and I think it's one that is too universally liked by folks to not do extremely well. I mean, like you said, the way that our algorithm works, it does not have a bias against new rides. The last 2 years, we've seen new rides win at least one of the championships. We saw Lightning Rod last year in a year where it only ran half the year, and then we saw Fury the year before in 2015. So I would not be shocked at all to see Mystic Timbers in the top 10. Top 5, maybe. I don't know. I mean, boy, the top 10 of the wood coaster list is starting to get very, very crowded. Yes. I mean, you've got the likes of Voyage, Lightning Rod, El Toro, and then Boulder Dash. Those 4 have always been there. Well, yeah. But, I mean, when you include Lightning Rod, let's assume that Lightning Rod's in the top 5 again, at least because it was last year's winner. I mean, that right there is 4 that have always been there. And then you've got rides like Phoenix, you've got Gold Striker, you've got Ravine Flyer, you've got Goliath at Six Flags Great America, you've got Outlaw Run. These are all rides that have been in the top 10 for the entirety of their lives in this poll. So the top 10 of the wood coaster list is very, very crowded. Thunderhead is one that's been right on the hairy edge of the top 10 in this poll before. Rampage was number 5 last year. Rampage, just surging into the top 10 last year. So all of a sudden, I think I just rattled off 9 or 10 right there. So you've got to ask yourself when filling out the bracket and, trying to predict where Mystic Timbers ends up, where does it fall in that class of rides? Does it fall within that class of coasters there? I think it does. I think it belongs somewhere in that group. I'm not going to go as far to say it's going to be number 1. I don't think so. Maybe. I don't think it will be, but it could be a top 5 coaster and make it to the final 4. I wouldn't be shy. I wouldn't be surprised even if it made it to the final 4. I think Mystic Timbers has a legitimate shot to make it to the final 4. It's all going to come down to matchup, I think, and which bracket the random number generator places it in, because we've seen the last couple of years, Outlaw Run, El Toro last year. Outlaw Run, the defending champ, goes down in the first round to El Toro, who then lost in the championship to Lightning Rod. So you could get something like that where Mystic Timbers gets knocked out in the first round. But in the overall scheme of things, I think Mystic Timbers will probably be a top 10 ride. Maybe not top 5, maybe on the hairy edge of a top 5. But I think if I had to put money on it, an amount of money that means something to me, I would put money on Mystic Timbers being at least in the top 10.
Now, I have a number of steel coasters here. Before we get to the last two big wood coasters that came out this year, I have a number of steel coasters that, might make it in based on who votes where. So I'm going to give you a list of 5 rides. Of the 5, which do you think has the best shot of making it in, and possibly which do you think has the best shot of placing highly? And those 5 are Hydrus, Super Cyclone at Santa's Village, Patriot out at California's Great America, Wavebreaker at SeaWorld San Antonio, or the new Star Trek Operation Enterprise ride.
Oh boy. Well, I'll save this. I think Super Cyclone, absolutely not. Hydrus, a ride I rode, a fun ride, not Thrilling 32 worthy. Let's be honest here. Let's see, what were the other 3 here you gave
Patriot,
me?
Wavebreaker,
and Star Trek. Patriot's interesting because it's on the West Coast, but that is too old of a ride. It's not big enough. It's not intense enough. It doesn't have enough to it. Now, Wavebreaker is where it gets interesting. Wavebreaker and Star Trek are where they get interesting, just because those are a little bit more unique, a little bit more of marquee attractions, I think you would call them. Wavebreaker.
Now, I rode Wavebreaker a few months ago, and Wavebreaker is a fun ride. It's a nice ride. Is it top 32 level? No.
I don't think so, especially considering, the European outreach we've had and how we've seen a lot of the European rides start to get in, like your Blue Fires and your Nemesis, and, Silver Star was even in it one year, Expedition G-Force, rides like that. So Wavebreaker, I'm going to say no. I don't think there's enough there. Now, Star Trek is an interesting one, and I'll tell you why. I think in terms of which one has the best chance to get in, I think I would actually say Star Trek. And the reason I say that is because we do have a group of German-centric voters that votes in this every year and has voted in the last several years. And I have a feeling this is one that a lot of them rode this year, because it's at Movie Park Germany, which is nearby Phantasialand, which is where a lot of those voters come from, central, Western Germany, if you will. And I feel like this one has the best chance to get in of any of the ones you mentioned. I don't think it gets in, but I think that might actually be a matter of ranking, not actually ridership. I think this is one that would actually qualify for the ridership, but won't be ranked highly enough. But then again, we see all these votes coming in from Germany. If these folks really, really liked it, then I guess there's a possibility there. Some people were mentioning Star Trek versus Tyrone, and if that were a choice to be given, I would still think Tyrone has the better chance. Tyrone has the pedigree now of being number 2 in favorite new ride last year, and then also being number 38 in the top 50 last year of the Steel. I think Tyrone, you predicted this a few weeks ago. You predicted Tyrone to be your ride that was not in last year that will get in this year. And I think there's a valid point there. I picked the Smiler myself. And I honestly do think both of those will get in. Where they rank is another discussion. But I think both of those would have a better chance over Star Trek. Although I think maybe Star Trek is another one to look at in the future, maybe as more people ride it. Yeah, but again, the Steel list is also getting very crowded. As if we keep putting rides like Tyrone and Smiler in, not only do we put those in, you've got to bump some out that are already in and that are already historically high ranking. So Star Trek probably has the best chance of getting in of that group of 5. That being said, I don't think any of those 5 will get in.
Well, this year. You have some garbage in that list, too, with rides like, Apollo's Chariot that you can just dump out. So you'll be okay there.
Apollo's Chariot's an interesting one.
So the next one, now this, of course, was the year of the wood coaster, I think. I think everyone has assumed that. So there are 2 other big wood coaster openings this year. The earlier of the 2 was Invader, that you got a chance to ride on opening day. does Invader have a shot here? Like, to me, it looks once again like it's too small, not a big enough punch to make it into the thrilling 32. But then again, we have always had, stuff like Apollo and Alpengeist sometimes have been in the thrilling 32. Sometimes they haven't, but they've, when they have, they've ranked well. So are we going to see that Williamsburg contingent, that Mid-Atlantic contingent, come out and vote Invader in and maybe voted in highly?
Yeah, I mean, the two strongest audiences that we pull from are the Midwest, out, Chicago, Ohio area, obviously, because, Cedar Point, and that's where you're located. And then we have the Mid-Atlantic audience, the Virginia, Maryland, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, New York area, which is where I'm located. And Invader's an interesting one. Invader might be the toughest call of any of the 2017 rides in terms of whether or not it gets in, because you hear a lot of people. Here's why. You hear a lot of people comparing Invader to White Lightning. And White Lightning has been a ride the last several years that has been in the thrilling 32. So when you first asked me about Invader, I immediately wanted to say no, because it's right around the 32 mark on my personal list. And then there's, some European wood coasters that I haven't ridden that tend to get in, like your Vodans and your Colossus and even Balder over in Sweden. So I think that rides like that will get in, which probably pushes it out. But then, I'm thinking of this myself and being like, well, everybody's talking about Invader and White Lightning and how comparable they are. And White Lightning is a ride that historically gets in to the thrilling 32. So this is probably the toughest one here. If I had to put an amount of money that's important to me on whether or not it gets in, I would probably bet on it not getting in. But that being said, I would not be surprised if it squeaks in. If it does get in, I think it actually does squeak in and is probably 30, 31, 32. I don't think we're talking about a top 10, top 15 ride here. That we're not talking about. But if Invader gets in, I wouldn't be surprised to see it get in, but I wouldn't expect it to make it past the first round.
And for all those wondering, Moneybags Miller over there, the dollar amount that's important to him would probably be in the $5,000 range, because he's just
Well, if I was, that would be an amount of money that's important to me.
So the last one, now this one has been the most divisive. That I've seen a lot of people say that this might actually be the best new ride of 2017. Some people say it's absolute garbage. So, I haven't been on it. You have. That ride is one Mindblower down at Fun Spot. This one, I have to imagine it's going to get in, just based on the number of people I've heard say that this is a great roller coaster. I have to imagine it's going to break the 32, and this might be one that some people are saying was better than Mystic Timbers, I've heard from a number of people. So if I'm talking Mystic Timbers as a top 5 ride, should I not also be talking Mindblower as maybe in the top 10?
Well, no, let's not get carried away here. I mean, Mindblower, in my opinion, is not going to be a top 10 ride. And I say that purely because of the point you brought up about it being so divisive. I think that's why we've never seen a ride like Skyrush win, even though some people think Skyrush is the best steel coaster in the world. There's enough people that hate it to keep it from winning. Yeah. And I think Mindblower is kind of in that same category as Skyrush. You either loved it or you hated it. And the number of people who love it outweighs the people who hate it, but it's not enough to completely make up for some of those people who absolutely hated it. Mindblower is not a smooth roller coaster. It is fast. It is intense. It is rough. It beats the hell out of you. I mean, there is no doubt about it. It is a wood coaster fan's wood coaster, which is very strange. You're not used to that in a ride's first few months, few weeks. I mean, they're closing this thing down at times to retrack it in the mornings, and it's only a few months old. It'd be lucky if it's standing in 10 years. But I loved Mindblower, and I know enough people who did love Mindblower where I think it's going to get in. I think Mindblower gets in. Where it places is going to be more interesting because I've seen it on a lot of people's lists, so I know a lot of people have ridden it. But I have seen that spread where some people have it very, very high and some people have it lower on their lists. It's really going to come down to how the algorithm averages that out. And again, that's something that right now we don't know. I can tell you I've seen it very high. I can tell you I've seen it very low. I've seen it higher more than I've seen it lower, which is why I think it's going to get in. But I don't think it's higher than Mystic Timbers. Wouldn't that be interesting if we saw Mindblower versus Mystic Timbers in the bracket? Now we have no control over that, but I think it would be mighty interesting if we came across that. I think Mindblower gets in. I don't know if it wins a game. I think Mystic Timbers gets in and wins a game unless it's playing one of those perennial top fives. In order to really kind of guarantee a first-round victory, you really kind of need to be in the top 10 or 12 because, we've seen rides that are in the 20s advance in the first round because you get like a 28 versus 23 matchup or something. The way the random number generator just spits it out, it might give you a crappy matchup. I think we had something like that last year where it was like, American Thunder versus, like Kentucky Rumbler or something like that, where you had two coasters in the 20s and one of them has to move on. So I think Mindblower gets in. I don't know if it wins a game unless it gets a matchup like that. I could see Mindblower knocking off a ride, like a Wooden Warrior or like a Comet from The Great Escape if it happened to get in. I could see it beating rides like that. I don't see it beating a Mystic Timbers. I don't see it beating a Thunderhead. I don't know if I even see it beating like a Shivering Timbers. I think that might actually be the range that it comes in, somewhere in there. I think Mindblower gets in, and I think it falls somewhere. I don't know. And this is going off my own list here because I have it at number 18. I think Mindblower probably ends up somewhere in the 15 to 25 range if it gets in, maybe even a little lower. I don't think it's any higher than like a 12 or a 15. I don't think it's going to do that well. But boy, there's some people who really love it. I don't know. I think Mindblower gets in though.
Well, as always, Miller, you've been no help whatsoever.
Yeah, of course. Because you have been a help.
So let me go through how this process moves forward from here. That once we have all the votes tallied, we will have a creation of the top 50 wood coasters, the top 50 steel coasters. Those will then be put into a random or will be put into a bracket according to a random number generator, so that there is no real seeding of the coasters. So one is not going to fight.
Right.
That's not how this bracket is set up. It's completely random because otherwise it would be pretty obvious, I think, until you got to the very end who would beat who. So anyway, so you could have, like you said, you could have a 21 fight a 25. Obviously, you won't know those numbers as you're filling out the bracket because you'll just see the names, not what their ultimate rank would have been. And then as we go through the rounds, whoever has the higher rank in each matchup will move on to the next round until ultimately we get the number one wood and the number one steel coasters at the very end. Obviously, one is going to beat every other number. So no matter what matchup it faces, number one is always going to win.
Yes.
So that really, Thrilling 32 does not determine at all the final 50 top 50 coasters for both wood and steel. It's just a fun way to reveal these things throughout the course of a few weeks.
Right. That's the thing to remember here as we get to the selection show, which will probably be coming your way in about 2 weeks or so. When we reveal the bracket, the rankings are set. The rankings are done. Everyone's voted, okay? The voting is done for the Ride Warrior Choice Awards and the Thrilling 32. The rankings have been determined based on your votes. That's it. The rankings are what they are tonight, even though I haven't calculated them yet. Whatever they are going to be tonight is what they'll be next week and the week after and the week after and at the end of the bracket challenge. When we reveal the bracket, those are the top 32 wood coasters and the top 32 steel coasters. They're randomly put into the bracket, and your job is to try and predict what the already existing rankings are by picking ultimately by picking whatever the number one coaster is. So you're trying to predict what the 386 voters in this year's Ride Warrior Choice Awards voted as the number one wood coaster and the number one steel coaster. You're not voting for which one you like better, for which one to move on, because that's already been predetermined. Because the minute we form that bracket is the minute that I know how that bracket shakes out. It has nothing to do with which one you pick in the bracket challenge. You're trying to predict the rankings.
Yes.
So there's always confusion about that. So we always try and be as explicitly clear every year that we can, because there's always people who confuse that. So I think we beat that to death enough. But this is odd, Andy, talking about the Thrilling 32 prior to the selection show, after voting has closed, and we don't know the results. Because to let you behind the scenes here, I've written some code so that I don't have to manually calculate these rankings anymore, which is what I've done the previous 5 years. So as each vote comes in, I've always known what the rankings are and how they changed. I'm waiting until the very end to run this script in MATLAB, and it's going to spit out the rankings at the end. So I don't know what the results are right now because I haven't run those programs. So you and I, for the very first time, are truly in the dark talking about that. We're in the same scenario as everyone else right now, in the sense that we don't know who's going to be in the bracket, we don't know who the number one coasters are, and we don't know what the rankings are.
Well, hold on one second. I'm getting a phone call. Let me answer this real quick. Hello? Arthur
Poor!
Art Poor's on the phone.
Art Poor!
How's it going, old man? Wait, hold on. This is big news. Big Thrilling 32 news. The defending champion, Arthur Poor, has just announced to me on the phone that he will indeed be entering the 2018.
Oh, yeah!
Arthur Poor is officially in. Thank you, sir. I hope to see you in the finals once again.
Arthur Poor. How about that, folks? Arthur Poor will be filling out his bracket this year once again.
Oh, yes. Now, obviously, I was talking to someone there, so you know that was a real person. So that's not me. I can't talk to myself, Danny Miller. So
no, of course not. I mean, you probably do any other time, but yeah.
So anyway, we're really excited about the Thrilling 32 this year. We can't wait to find out who ultimately will be the Ride Warrior Choice Awards #1 in wood and steel champions. So, you know, we'll let you in on that selection show, who ranks where and who places where on those brackets, so that you'll be able to enter this year's bracket challenge. And we'll talk more about that on the selection show. But as always, thank you for joining us here on this special update to the Thrilling 32. I'm, of course, Ainer Barczyk from Chicago, Illinois.
And Danny Miller from Binghamton, New York.
And as always, right on, Ride Warriors.
See you guys.